share.
Can we all rise for the pledge, please?
I'll share with you there, Mary.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Could we remain standing for a moment of silence for the 7 additional service members that we've lost in the last month since our last meeting? Thank you. Welcome to the Philipstown Town Board. This is April. We're halfway through the month, thankfully. And finally, some decent weather. So we're going to start out with a continuation of the public hearing for the proposed local law. Tara, do you want to go ahead and read it off?
You want me to read it again?
Yes, please.
Notice is hereby given that a public hearing will be held by the Town Board of the Town of Philipstown on March 5th, 2026 at 7:30 p.m. at the Philipstown Town Hall, 238 Main Street, Cold Spring, New York. The purpose of the public hearing is to hear comments for or against a proposed local law entitled, a local law to amend Article 5 entitled Open Space Development of Chapter 175 entitled Zoning of the Town Code in regard to approval of conservation subdivisions within the Town of Philipstown. A complete copy of the local law is available for inspection upon request sent to Town Clerk at Philipstown.com and is also available on the Philipstown website, philipstown.gov. Dated February 18th, 2026, by order of the Town Board, Tara K. Picciello, Town Clerk.
Can I get a motion to reopen the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I vote aye. So we did have a discussion about this last month, and we had an opinion from the planning board. We didn't have an overall opinion of the board. We had a couple comments in reference to the proposed law from some members of the planning board. So we sent it back to the planning board. We were looking for an overall vote from them on the proposed local law, which now we do have, and they have voted in favor of supporting the change to the zoning code. Is there any comments from the town board?
No, I want to thank the planning board for their thoughtful review, and also the committee that worked on this.
Yeah, they voted 5-1 to keep the changes that the committee came up with.
Anything else from the board? Anything from the public in reference to this? No? Okay, can I get a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I vote aye. So Tara will have to refer this to
We're
county
going to need a resolution for the next meeting.
next meeting. Okay, perfect. Okay, approval of minutes, monthly meeting, January 8th, 2026.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Workshop meeting of January 14th, 2026.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Committee reports, Conservation Board.
No report, did not meet last month.
What? Recreation.
Thank you to Cecily Hall for the recreation report. Philipstown Recreation Commission held its most recent monthly meeting on Tuesday, April 7th. In attendance were several National Honor Society volunteers from the Haldane High School who are working with the Friends of Philipstown to develop a survey to the community that would poll families as to what programs and events they'd like to see more of. So thank you to those students and the Friends of Philipstown Recreation for the survey. Programs. The classes for the spring are off and running smoothly. Summer camp registration kicked off in March for the 2026 summer camp season, and that registration went very smoothly. Most people who are on waiting lists are already seeing movement, as expected. And for senior programs, there have been several new senior trips announced for the spring: a Renegades game, a casino, a city winery, and a lunch concert at the Brownstone in New Jersey. The spring senior luncheon has been scheduled for May 20th. And the first ever, I want to congratulate the Recreation Department for this, the first ever community tag sale event in March was a success in its first go-around. Suggestions for more of these types of events each year are welcome, and the Philipstown Recreation Commission and Department are possibly adding a holiday market type sale as well. So thank you for all your efforts For these funds are raised for the Philipstown recreation programs. The family Easter egg hunt last week was also very well attended, with roughly 60 families participating. The Recreation Commission also reported on the theater. The Depot Theater should be hearing this month as to whether or not they will receive funding to begin construction on the proposed building on the rec property, which you've heard about at previous town board meetings. The building and grounds report for the rest of the Recreation Department they continue to update the new lower level rooms for the additional summer camp space. The grounds are being prepared, and the property and fields for Philipstown Park and Recreation opening day for spring sports. So they're very busy with that. And the Highway Department graded the drive today, which is, thank you to the Highway Department. That's great collaboration. And the park opening is scheduled for Saturday, April 18th. Please note, if you would like to attend, the next Recreation Commission meeting will be held on Thursday, April 28th.
Judy, thank you to the rec department. Cecily, I have a quick question. Do we have bathrooms in the pavilion functioning yet?
Yeah.
We don't. Okay, thank you.
But we do have picnic tables that were handmade by our staff.
Nice.
And so that you can utilize that space already.
Great.
But you have to use the porta potties.
Unfortunately. Okay, I'll follow up with the committee on that. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Judy.
Thank you, Cecily.
Philipstown Hub.
Philipstown Hub, thank you to Michelle Cupper for her report. The Philipstown Hub has been very busy. And importantly, they have a new logo, which is beautiful. I don't think you can see it here, but it is on their website. So if you go to the Philipstown Hub website, there is a new logo, and the space in between the logo, just to tell you what the vision was for this, forms a window, which is a symbol of transparency and a clear entry point to care. A window is where light enters. A window shows that we are findable and visible, and it signals welcome and entry. So congratulations to the Hub on the new logo. The Hub facilitated several groups throughout our community in March, including a support group for suicide loss survivors on March 2nd, 16th, and 30th, a woman with ADHD peer group on March 3rd and 17th, the Compass Circle, which is a series of workshops for parents and guardians of teenagers and young adults living with mental health struggles on March 12th. The Grief and Loss Support Group was on March 3rd, and the Men's 60 years old and older interests and issues group met at the Friendship Center in Philipstown on March 6th and 13th. The staff also visited St. Christopher's Inn at Graymore, which is a residential recovery program. The Hub also has a series of very fun, exciting events coming up in April. The tango lesson on Thursday, April 16th, family yoga on Saturday, May 9th, and the community hike on Sunday, May 17th. So April and May, the Hub has a lot of events, and they also launched the club at the Hub for middle school students starting at the end of the month. It's a welcoming space where middle school students build confidence, learn social, emotional skills, and connect with peers in a supportive environment. It kicks off on April 22nd and will run for 8 consecutive Wednesdays. So if you have middle school students, this is a club at the Hub, and they will host a parent informational session on Wednesday, April 15th from 4:30 to 6 p.m. And it's being funded by the Putnam County Youth Bureau, so thank you to the Putnam County Youth Bureau. Finally, I just want to note the numbers for the Hub as they continue to serve our community. In March, there were 450 touch points. And for the year to date, 3,755 people have been touched or connected with the Hub, which is terrific. There are a lot of calls, emails, texts, in-person visits, Zooms, and through all the groups that they provide support for. The Hub is connected with thousands of people in our community, so thank you to the staff, the board, and the director, Michelle Cupper.
Thank you, Judy. Planning Board.
Attended the planning board meeting on March 26th. Bunch of correspondence. Jaymark Jewelers, return of the Resco was approved. Gatekeepers, return of the Resco was also approved. Hudson Valley Shakespeare was removed no correspondence with them. Vasta, which is a property that's been in front of the planning board for many years now, they're still waiting back for some notifications and some letters from Ron Gaynor, who spoke to them after the last meeting. They haven't gotten back to them to move this project forward. First thing, we had a referral of the local law, which you discussed earlier on the public hearing here. So that's been, as we indicated, that's been approved, and we're going to pass that, a resolution, I guess, at next month's meeting. And it was, like I said, it was passed by the board members, planning board 5-1. There was a public hearing. Gershmeyer, Hammer, and Skolkoll, private road off of Route 9 in Garrison. It's a minor project. The applicant is seeking the approval for a new construction of a single-family home to be served by surface water sewage treatment, and it's in a well. In a well. Expected action was at the public hearing. There was only one citizen that spoke, and the only concern that he had, he's asked during the construction site to keep the dust down. Besides that, there was no other person that wanted to speak. So they're preparing a resolution for next month's meeting, which is on March 24th at 7:30. Under new business, Villani, 3191 US Route 9 in Cold Spring. This is the old site of the old Comfort Master. It's that building right across the street from the golf station on Route 9 and by Valenti Concrete. They need a special, they're kind of a change in business, so they've got to change in use they have to apply for. They want to put up 2 commercial garages in support of their business. The business is kind of like a party rental. They're going to be renting like party supplies, tables and chairs and so forth like that. So that's what they're planning on doing there. So the planning board made it a type 2 seeker action, presented requirements, also presented to the county planning, conservation board, North Islands Firehouse, and the building inspector. Meeting was adjourned at 8:35. Again, next building meeting is April 24th, 7:30.
That would be PM, not AM.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Thanks, Bobby. Thank you to the planning board. Zoning. Nat, I do appreciate the font size.
You want bigger
Supervisor,
fonts?
referring to my one-page report on the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting that's in your packet, but let me give you the 3 highlights. The first one was that Michael Lascalzi of Continental Village did get a special use permit to build the shed that he wants to build next to his house. And the second item is that Allison Miriam from Garrison got a variance. She was granted a variance to build a 6-foot wooden fence along her property on 9D. And the third most important item is that the members of the zoning board would like to get new zoning books, so that the last time they had zoning books, it was somewhat like 10 years ago, so they're old school people. They like to work with the book, and they would have requested that we get them new zoning books, and I'm going to make a plea to the rest of us that we consider doing that for them.
Yeah, Tara, can we go about printing?
Yeah,
All right, perfect.
it's easy.
Maybe we could send it out.
It's the first time I heard of the request, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's easy.
All right, perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Nat. Thank you to the zoning board, and Bob will get you your books. No problem. Highway Department.
Highway Department, submitted by Adding Hoteling, Superintendent of Highways. It's pothole season. Crews have started filling potholes on soft spots on dirt roads. After this long, intense winter, there will be plenty of cleanup needed on all roads and drains. We ask for your patience, as this is not going to happen overnight. Crews are also begun sweeping roads, which is normal for this time of the year. The highway truck fleet just got bigger with arrival of 2 E-trucks. We got 2 Ford 150 Lightnings, one for the highway department and one for our building department. This is all didn't cost us a penny. We got grant money for this, so it's nice to see. Now, this is our 3rd electrical vehicle we have within our truck system with Switch. So, and recreation was the first one to have one. The department received approximately 28 phone calls and emails and roughly spent $18,000 on truck maintenance. End of report.
Thank you. Thank you to the highway crew. Thank you, Bobby. Building and land, I don't really have anything other than I did reach out to Tom Lannon at the county about the communication tower. The equipment was apparently delivered last week for it to go in service. They're going to start testing the communication system in the next month, so hopefully it'll go online soon. But the new system does serve us much better with the emergency services than the old system, and this is the final piece of the puzzle, so it should really boost the power. But that's all I have. Cemetery Committee?
Nothing.
Okay. Agenda, Tara.
First on the agenda is the Putnam County Department of Health to provide a brief presentation on the findings of the Community Health Assessment for the Community Health Improvement Plan.
Welcome. Thank you.
Where?
Sure.
Okay. Can I put this in? Sure. All right. Hi, everybody. Shanna Siegel from Putnam County Department of Health. I have with me Allie. As Tara said, we're going to try to be brief with our overview of our findings from the Community Health Assessment. There are a few kind of hyper-local pieces, though, that I'm excited to kind of talk about, not with the data, but with kind of hearing these reports and putting context to what I'm about to share. So just as a heads up, before we wrap up and let you move on with the rest of your agenda, Allie will be passing out cards for everybody, optional. We would love your input at the end, so I'll give you directions as soon as I finish, and then we have kind of leave-behinds up here in these little bags that you're welcome to take with you as well for everyone. Okay. So what you see up on the slides here, actually, if anybody would like an accommodation and have something in their hand, we have laminated packets. If it's hard for anybody to see the screen, if you give a little wave, Allie can drop a packet in front of you if it's easier to see. Okay, so what you'll see up here is that we've identified 8 focus areas from our community health assessment. All of the data from the assessment, as well as all of the links to the sources that were used, is available on our website. So I'm not going to go into detail about the collection of the data, but you can read all about it in a much longer document on our website. But there was a very thorough systematic review of primary and secondary data that led us to these 8 areas. And what you'll see is the top 2 that we're going to talk about, and actually the third one down, healthcare access as well. So economic stability, food access, healthy eating, and healthcare access are what we call social determinants of health, or drivers of health, right? So these are factors that contribute to how healthy a community is. Some of the other areas that we'll talk about are health outcomes. So they're a little bit more identifiable as things that people who are addressing health in a community can directly address. Some of these other issues in public health, we really are appreciative to come to town boards, talk to our elected officials, and other policymakers and decision makers, because in public health, we can only do so much. We really rely on the entire system to take care of our communities. So you'll see here economic stability. I am not an economist. So what I'll share with you are just some data points and some kind of curiosities that we bring up in public health about why we might be seeing what we see. So we can, I think we can dive in. Tick-borne disease, you'll see up here. I will not go into detail on that tonight. In Putnam County, it is no surprise that anytime we assess the health of our community, we have a high rate of tick-borne disease in Putnam County. We always address it. We're giving out tick kits. You'll see us in the community all spring and all summer, giving out supplies. We're in touch with healthcare providers. So that remains a priority regardless. But New York State doesn't have it on their formal document, which is really a roadmap for us that we're required to kind of follow for our health improvement plan. So have no fear, we'll be addressing tick-borne disease, but we're not going to take time tonight to speak about it specifically. Okay, thanks, Sarah. Go ahead. All right, so we're going over here. What we know is what I'm going to share with you. What we want to know, why we're going to town boards and showing up in other settings, is because we want to know what's the impact on the community, the individual, the family, and then what resources can we harness to address this issue, and what matters most to everyone else. So we've already taken a first step, and we have shared this information with a coalition that we work with very closely in the county called Live Healthy Putnam. They're a coalition of community organizations from all over Putnam County, people who really serve residents firsthand. And they work in various fields, from mental health to other healthcare areas, youth serving, seniors. So we already worked with stakeholders in a professional way to review the data and find out what they feel about this. We want to come right to the community this year to do the same. We also presented this very briefly at a health committee meeting at the Putnam County Legislature. And so Legislator Montgomery was there for that. And she also wishes she could be here tonight, but she is attending a ceremony for our youth in Putnam County. But just so that you're aware, all of our elected officials at the county level have received this information as well. Okay, thanks, Sarah. Move on. After we get all this information, we come back to work at the health department to say, okay, this is what organizations and community leaders told us. This is what the community told us. Now, what are we going to do with that information? So we formally have to submit something to the state that will have, that's called our Community Health Improvement Plan. But we are working on community health improvement year-round, so there's only a few things that will go in that report, but all of the information we collect will be meaningful in helping not only the health department, but other county agencies, as well as nonprofits and folks who work in Putnam County in other ways to prioritize the work they do as well. Thanks. We'll dive in finally. So what everybody's been waiting for here, you don't need me to tell you that economic stability is a major factor that contributes to the health and well-being of a community. This was selected as a focus area because even though we are comparatively to other counties, an affluent county, we have the third highest median income in the state, and we have fairly low unemployment. We're seeing indications that there's increasing economic strain, low but increasing poverty rates, and indications that income isn't actually keeping pace with expenses. Now, that's not unique to Putnam County, of course, but we do feel that it is important to bring that message here because when you start to look at the other main issues that we're going to talk about today, or these focus areas, we can see how economic instability is actually going to make those factors perhaps more concerning over time. So you can see here that there's a high percentage of cost-burdened renter-occupied units. If you don't know what that means, which I didn't before our community health assessment, it means that the household spends more than 30% of its gross income on rent and utilities. So we're seeing that that's rising over time in Putnam County. So there are probably, like many things we're going to talk about, kind of two sides to the coin. So more rental housing becoming available in Putnam County is a good thing in a lot of ways, but being aware of the economic cost for the renters is really important as well. So we're going to consider how economic stability impacts all these other issues, as I said. Something else that I did want to point out is that our school districts are aware, and they do, many of them do offer no-cost breakfast and lunch for all students, regardless of income. Those are free meals for students, but they are seeing a higher proportion of students in Putnam County that would qualify for reduced cost meals anyway. Okay, so we can move on. You'll have a chance to kind of ask questions or give your input at the end. So food access and healthy eating, very closely tied, as we can see, to economic stability. We have a comparatively low prevalence of food insecurity in Putnam County, but similarly to economic stability, we're seeing that the food insecurity is actually increasing over time. And we're seeing this alongside a trend of a higher proportion of adults that are not consuming fruits or vegetables, as well as a higher proportion of adults who are overweight or obese. So when you take this kind of together in the bigger picture, we're talking about not just food access, but that's why we added in healthy eating to this as well. We know that dietary habits can be a risk factor for overweight and obesity, which I already mentioned, and also various chronic diseases. So what you didn't see on our list of focus areas are like specific chronic diseases, heart disease, cancer, but we know that in Putnam County, like much of the rest of the state and the country, these are usually the top reasons why people are dying as well. So when we want to talk about preventing premature death, we want to make sure that we're looking at the factors that contribute to that as well. Like I said, you won't really see some of those chronic diseases on our list, but we know that more upstream approaches like addressing economic insecurity and food insecurity and healthy eating can help prevent us from seeing those statistics in our population later on. Thank you. We'll go to the next slide. So healthcare access. I know that these charts are small on here, so you'll have to trust me when I tell you that you can see everything in detail on our website, and there's many more data points that you can dive into there as well. But when it comes to healthcare access, this is another area where it may seem like we are doing fairly well, but we're not looking at each indicator on its own. We're really looking at it and how they relate to one another. So when we look at the trend over time for healthcare access, we see that percentage of the population with insurance appears to be an insulating factor. So that means Putnam County, compared to other counties, even in the Mid-Hudson region, has a seemingly low rate of uninsured residents. However, people are reporting that there is still an obstacle to getting health care that includes cost. So even if you're insured, we know that cost is growing. Additionally, we see a disparity in healthcare access, both when it comes to the percentage of the population that's insured, as well as the people who are accessing care. When it comes to our population disparities in Putnam County, frequently it's hard to identify. But in the past several cycles of our community health assessment, we have been able to note disparities among race and ethnicity. So you hear me say that twice tonight, and one of those is in healthcare access. So what we see is that our white majority population seems to be having less barriers to accessing healthcare than our people of color in Putnam County. And when I bring this up later on, when we talk about child preventive services and maternal health, these are areas that it's important to note because, again, we're not an outlier in Putnam County. We're just finally seeing that our data matches that of surrounding areas and much of the rest of the country. Okay, we'll move on to mental health. Mental health is always a very big topic when we go out to talk to our community as well as our partners, and understandably so. For reasons that this is one of those areas we just get curious about. For reasons we get curious about in Putnam County, Putnam residents tend to report a higher prevalence of mental distress than other counties in our Mid-Hudson area. Now, these are survey respondents in many ways. However, that data is important to kind of talk about, right? I'm not going to hold that to myself. I share that with you here so that we can start thinking about what are some reasons why people might be reporting that in Putnam County. And so we've known for a long time what's not on our community health assessment this year, but has been on previous years as a social determinant of health is transportation. And I know that's kind of a hot topic everywhere as well. But we know that we have more commuters in Putnam County than perhaps some surrounding areas. People are traveling longer distances to get to work because we have less employment opportunity in Putnam County. So there's a lot of commuting. We also know that we just talked about the economic burden that many people are feeling, as well as healthcare burden. So it's understandable why people might be experiencing distress. But we also look, when we are talking about substance use, it's really important to talk about co-occurring disorders. And I know you guys have great champions for this work in the Philipstown Hub, as was mentioned earlier. But the co-occurring disorder is when people can be diagnosed with both substance use disorder as well as mental health disorder. And so even though you're not going to see up here substance use trends, in previous years that's been flagged, and we're constantly watching that and working on that as well. We also see that our suicide rates in Putnam County are, again, if you compare it to just the region and you look at it on its own, it may not seem concerning, but when you look at it over time, we're not really seeing an improvement in our suicide rates in Putnam County. So we have coalitions that are working very closely together on these issues that are related to both mental health, suicide prevention, and substance use. However, we understand that it takes a lot more than just the coalitions working, the community being aware that these remain issues, whether or not you've been touched by it recently, is also very important. So we want to look at what are the reasons that people are carrying this mental health burden, and what can we do to lighten that? And are there more, again, I'll mention it from a public health perspective, upstream approaches. So having the services that people need when they need it, especially in crisis, is vital. But also improving quality of life for people can help lessen that burden of the mental health.
We are really wildly higher than the rest of the area in this issue. I mean,
Yeah, so what you see up here, and I'm like kind of brushing over the actual data points because they're a little hard for folks to see, but what you will see now that the supervisor has mentioned that is that this data is, it's a little old, right? We are kind of subject to when dashboards get updated where we're pulling our data from. So some of this is coming from New York State, and you'll see that we're looking at the height of the pandemic in 2021. data collection and what people were experiencing, take that for what it's worth. But we also know that when we are conducting our survey that was done over the phone, a phone survey this past in 2025, we're seeing these similar trends to what's reported on the state. As well, in Putnam County, when you see that, regardless of being higher than other counties, which matters, we look at 3 factors generally when we're trying to decide how do we prioritize things when everything seems to be a really big issue, right? We really want to take care of all aspects of health. So we look at how are we doing against ourselves over time? How are we doing comparative to our neighbors? How are we doing comparative to the state? And are there any disparities? So are there any racial or economic disparities that can be noted? And so particularly in this area, you can see that we kind of hit on much of that. Yes. So we'll go to the next slide. Alcohol and tobacco use. Putnam County consistently does track higher than our neighboring counties when it comes to binge drinking. This has not changed in some time. So alcohol use is an area that shows up time and again, our community health assessment. We put alcohol and tobacco use together on this slide because we're seeing them kind of track together over time in Putnam County as well. Tobacco use on the slide that is visible for you today is current smokers, adult smokers, so not vaping, smoking. And so to see that also rising over time, and again, this just goes to 2021, what is up here, that is a troubling data point as well. And so when we look at both smoking and drinking in adults, we're wondering, okay, well, what's the impact on our younger population, right? So I'm glad that we're sitting here, heard you talk about Philipstown Hub. Michelle Cupper and Allie actually went over to the Philipstown Hub. We have a vaping education and prevention display that has like a lot of facts that people can learn about, but can also see the brain and the impact of nicotine on the brain. And they set it up at the hub, and so we thought it was good timing since they were starting this middle school drop-in group after school, that it can be a conversation point. So families, parents, even when they're dropping their kids off, that you can talk about this issue more. So it's so wonderful that there are shared spaces like this in your community to start these conversations, and maybe they make it home to the dinner table also. But when it comes to young people, we don't really get a lot of data on young people, right? We're not surveying them the same way. However, in Putnam County, we're also extremely lucky because the Prevention Council of Putnam, that's located in Carmel, but they work all across the county, and they do work closely with the hub as well. They survey every 2 years in Putnam County high schools, 8th, 10th, and 12th graders. Well, 8th graders in middle school, 10th and 12th graders. So they get this cohort of students, and it's a national survey that's developed. It's called the Prevention Needs Assessment, and it surveys their attitudes and understandings and usage, both of themselves and their understanding of usage among their peers on substances, including alcohol, tobacco, and also attitudes toward other substances, as well as mental health. And so utilizing the data from the latest prevention needs assessment, there were a couple of points, there's so many data points in that as well, but a couple of the points that kind of came to our attention specifically were that we were seeing that young people were reporting that they have ridden with a drunken driver in the last month. So comparative to the national standard, or what we're seeing on the national average, both the binge drinking from high schoolers as well as the reporting of driving in the car, being in a car with a driver who had been drinking was higher. So, you know, again, taking this all together, right? We're seeing the binge drinking, and we're hearing from students that they're in cars with people who have been drinking. Now, that's not to say we don't know if that's a peer or that's an adult in their life, but I think it's important information for us to have. Okay, we'll move on. We are almost done. Thank you for bearing with me here. Okay. And again, I don't want to leave out that alcohol and tobacco use are, again, major risk factors for the same chronic diseases that we, you know, are looking at earlier when we talked about healthy eating. Okay, so pre- and postnatal care. when we talk about population health, and especially in Putnam County, where we have, under 100,000 people that live in Putnam County, I sometimes have to say, are we looking at, the greatest impact on a population or the greatest amount of people being impacted, right? And both of them are population health to me. So this is an area where we're really looking at perhaps a smaller portion of our population when we talk about pre and postnatal care, but a vital part of our population if we want to have a growing, healthy population. So pre and postnatal care, we do see a disparity among race and ethnicity. Again, not unique to Putnam County, but we do see lower utilization of early prenatal care and worse outcomes in communities of color than the majority white non-Hispanic population. And on the bottom chart you'll also see that we see a declining proportion of infants that are exclusively breastfed in their delivery hospital. So upon discharge, have they been exclusively breastfed? And we're seeing that drop off quite a bit. Now, every community may have, different values and understandings about some of the issues that we bring up. But again, the point is to start the conversation, to get curious. What is important here? What's important to our community? We'll move on to the last one. Thank you. Okay, so child preventive services. We had a great team in Putnam County. Our nursing division at the health department worked after our last community health assessment. They worked very closely with pediatric providers, several throughout the county, to increase overall childhood vaccination rates. So we saw this alarming trend that was happening throughout the country, where the childhood vaccine series rates were declining, the completion of that series. They worked with practices, and we see that number has risen, which is so wonderful, but something that we see a very steep drop-off on, which is going to be very hard to see on the top chart. That is looking at the complete HPV vaccination for children under 15 years old. But Putnam County is, and Allie always helps me with this, we're red. So you can't really see us. We're like in the middle when you look at 2019, is that first one 2019? But we drop right down to the bottom as you come closer to 2024. I got that right? So HPV vaccination can be extremely effective in preventing the most common strains of HPV that are most commonly causes of cervical cancer. And so this is a vaccine that can prevent cancer. And we saw a huge drop off in our population of young people who are getting that complete vaccine series. So this is an area that, again, we're getting really curious about that, what can we do? Maybe something similar to what we did with pediatric providers for the childhood vaccine series to get those numbers up. And additionally, another kind of alarming factor that we're looking into is the bottom chart shows that the percentage of children who were tested at least twice for lead before the age of 3. So if anyone's been around a newborn lately or has young kids in their life, children are supposed to be tested for lead at age 1 and at age 2. So their blood lead levels can be an indicator that they're getting lead exposure, and lead poisoning can be so much more detrimental to a young growing body because their immune systems are so immature. So that blood lead level can build up and it can cause developmental delays, illnesses. And so these testing that happens in a pediatric provider's office gives us information about if we need to investigate in a home or a workplace where an exposure might be taking place, and we can help that family. So seeing that we have this drop off in Putnam County as well as the state. So Putnam's in yellow, the state's in blue. So we're kind of tracking with the state, but we were doing really well. And we saw that drop off. This was all before the pandemic that drop happened. So this is new data, even though it doesn't feel that way. So we have to look into that and see what's going on so we can help these families. Okay, so we'll just go to the very last piece. Allie, if you don't mind, I don't want to take up too much time, but I'm happy, Supervisor, if you have questions or anything that stood out to you, Allie's going to pass out these cards that have 7 of the areas, all 7 that we just went over here with you. We would love for you to mark off 5 that you think are really important, or up to 5. It's hard to choose, I know, which is why we're not asking you to pick the most important. Additionally, this QR code will take you to a much longer form survey that gives you the details as well as an opportunity to put in if there are interventions or actions that you think can be taken. So there's a real opportunity if you scan that QR code. It's also on our website. We've posted it on social media to give real meaningful feedback on this is what I'd like to see in the community, not just these are the things that are important to me.
So one thing I'd like to note is we often complain we don't get a lot of services in Putnam, or in Philipstown from Putnam. So this is our opportunity to be the squeaky wheel and ask for the services. So if you can go online and get the QR code and fill out the survey, we could get real results.
We'll leave it open for a few more weeks. May will be the time back at the office that we're really kind of digging deep into what we've heard from everybody. So we're headed into other towns next week, so that survey will be open.
And as far as the food insecurity and income, we have a few residents that really skew our average income. And we've found this with grant applications. So we'd often said if we could take the top 10 off and the bottom 10, we would really get an idea, because I think there's more people that are in that range that need help than we really are aware of. And we had a wonderful program. We produced sweet potatoes with 30,000 pounds of sweet potatoes last year from this community. But one person not eating and one person not getting health care is unsatisfactory for the community. So with the amount of wealth that's in this county and the town. So thank you so much for your presentation. It was enlightening. Anything from the board or the
I
community?
do have a question. I did listen, I have a background in public health, and I was listening to the Putnam Health Committee meeting last night, and I heard the chief executive, I think, of Putnam Hospital, talk about the increase in emergency room visits. Is that a concern to you? Because it seemed to be a significant increase, and a lot of those visitors were uninsured.
Oh, that I did not listen to was it Dr. Herco?
Yes.
Okay, I listened to the health department. I was not there, and I listened to the health department and then didn't tune into the rest yet, but I will listen to what Dr. Herco said. I am on the a hospital community health needs committee, so I do get updates sometimes, but I didn't hear it firsthand. It is like we do look into issues of safety and injuries and things like that, and there weren't flags on this data, but real-time data is so important, and that's not, in our community health assessment, we're not reviewing that because we're reviewing clean data that's been through, many processes at the state level, but I'm so glad you brought up local data, because Bob Cuomo, who couldn't be here tonight, that was going to come speak on community paramedicine, he shares through the Bridge Alliance we have, which works on preventing both fatal and non-fatal overdoses in Putnam County. He shares some data that comes through 911 about BLS and ALS calls. And so that real-time data tells me what's happening in overdoses that we don't see on what I just shared. And so same with Dr. Herco sharing information about what's going on at the hospital. It's information I don't get otherwise. So I will look into it. It wasn't on my radar.
Thank you.
And also Hudson Valley Hospital, where we don't get information from, we know, I live in Putnam Valley, so I know how many residents are not, headed east to the hospital. It's not a complete representative of our
Is there a labor
population.
and delivery at Putnam? And I know that it was closed for a while, then it came
They
back.
reopened it, but I don't know how many births they've had there since.
Thank you very much.
Anything
Thanks
else
for your
from the
question.
board? Public? Any questions from the public?
Quick question.
Sure.
What is the prevalence of lead poisoning in Putnam as compared to neighboring counties?
That is in our community health assessment, but I don't know it off the top of my head. But I'll send you the link for it. We don't have one printed, right, Ally? Like a full community health assessment? No, okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for asking though. But
Anything
seeing that
else?
it trended with the state, I wouldn't be surprised, if the trend line looks similar in the Mid-Hudson region.
Perfect, thank you. Anything from the community, public, any question?
Oh, yes. Putnam County, ny.gov/health. There's a lot of information on our website. So you're going to look for the place that says Community Health Assessment, And then there's several documents. If you want to read one that's several hundred pages, that would be the Mid-Hudson Community Health Assessment, the Mid-Hudson region. We did that in partnership with several other counties, but there's a Putnam County specific one that will give you, I think, just the right amount of information.
Perfect. Thank you so much. That was a lot of information.
Yes.
Appreciate
Thank you for
it.
your time. Please take some of our bags here, and if you don't mind, we'll, use your cards as another data point for us.
Perfect. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Next on the agenda was supposed to be Bob Cuomo, Director of Emergency Medical Services for Putnam County, to discuss the new community paramedicine program, but unfortunately, he could not make it this evening.
So he'll be coming in May, correct?
Well, we haven't confirmed that yet.
Okay.
Hope so, John.
I mean, the invite is there, so
Perfect. Thank you.
we'll find out. Next is Jeff Mikkelson to discuss the Cold Spring Chamber's application for a New York State Budget Initiative grant to expand its commercial food scrap program.
Hi, Jeff. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Here, didn't make copies for everybody, but there are some for all the town board members. Hello, my name is Jeff Mikkelson, and I'm coming here tonight wearing two hats as the advocacy chair for the Cold Spring Chamber of Commerce, also a board member, and as a member of the Cold Spring and Philipstown Climate Smart Task Force. As you all know, because this board was instrumental in making it happen, as well as some of the people in the audience tonight, Philipstown has a relatively new but extremely successful residential food scrap recycling program. Two drop-off points, one on Lane Gate Road, one on Kemble Avenue. It's growing constantly. I think there are over 350 families participating at this point. Great program, and between the Chamber and the Cold Spring and the Climate Smart Task Force, we've been talking now for a couple of years about the possibility of putting together a commercial food scrap recycling program that would build on that very successful residential program. And last year we held a workshop that I think a couple of you attended, getting together. Yeah, Bob was there. Nat, you were there. And some local business owners, and as well as, by the way, another partner of ours in this effort, CET. It's a nonprofit that's contracted through the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, Rethink Food Waste New York program. That's a lot of verbiage to put together, but anyway, CET has been incredibly helpful. They helped us with the workshop, basically a brainstorming session to see how this kind of program might work. And what came out of that is that there's a lot of interest, but that it would need to be, relatively easy to implement for the businesses and other organizations, and relatively cheap. And that it would also need to be a direct relationship between the businesses and organizations and a hauler that would take the food scraps away and compost them. So with that in mind, CET came back in April, conducted site assessments with several of those attendees to collect further information about how they might be able to transition their operations, where they're diverting more of their food scraps and taking them out of the landfills. And I should probably back up for a second and just mention that besides the benefit that you get from putting food scraps into compost rather than into landfills or into incinerators, you reduce your carbon footprint substantially. Communities like Philipstown, and I think actually the assessment that was done in Philipstown showed that the single largest emitter of greenhouse gases is the landfill, because those food scraps go into the landfill, they produce methane over time. Methane is a very potent greenhouse gas. So by diverting a lot of food scraps into composting rather than into the landfills or incinerators, you're substantially reducing your food scrap or your carbon footprint. So that's the motivation behind it. So anyway, we came out of those the workshop and the site assessments with a pretty clear idea of what we wanted to do. And over the last year or so, we've been slowly putting that into motion. And we did an RFP in the fall, reaching out to haulers that service this area, to find out who has, the best terms, best prices, that kind of thing. And we landed on, as it happens, the hauler that services the residential program. It's called CRP, right? They gave us a great price and great terms. And so beginning of this year, and one other thing I should mention is that through CET, in preparation for launching this pilot, we managed to secure a small grant through, of all places, Williams College, which isn't in New York, but they have a climate fund to support this kind of thing in municipalities and with businesses. And we got a small grant for them, $6,000, basically seed funding to get it up and running, cover some of the startup costs and some of the hauling costs for the first 3 to 6 months for a few businesses. Really, we're looking like 5 or 6 businesses with that amount of money. So we launched the program beginning of this year, and so far we have several that have already signed on, actually 5. Hudson Valley Shakespeare, the Garrison Restaurant, has signed on, although they're not applying for the funding. Marbled Meats, Haldane Schools, it's not just businesses, but schools and nonprofits can participate. So Haldane Schools, the Garrison Institute, and let's see, the 5th I'm blanking on, but there are a couple more in the pipeline coming down that are also interested. So we're looking at this point at about 6 businesses, schools, organizations that are interested and that want the funding. So that's great. And they're in the process of onboarding. Some of them have already gotten their bins and will be composting soon. Oh, I remember the 5th. It's the Cold Spring Farmers Market, which will probably be going in on it with basketball during their busy season. So anyway, that funding that we have, that $6,000, is pretty much exhausted between those 5 or 6 that are going to be participating in the initial pilot. And we'll be, building on that as we go on. But what we discovered recently is that we might have access, to another larger grant. And this would be through the state, and specifically through Assembly Member Dana Levenberg's office. They have something that comes along once a year. Maybe you guys are familiar with it. It's called a Budget Initiative Grant. As I understand it, it's kind of a weird situation where the state, around April every year, tells districts that they have this amount of money that they can spend on this kind of project, and they don't really tell them until that time, how they can use that money exactly, what the guidelines are. But sometime in April, they get that information, the districts do, and then they have this money to spend. And Dana Levenberg's office is very interested in at least applying on our behalf for a grant. And this could be, these grants tend to range from $10,000 to $30,000. So it would be an opportunity for us to significantly extend and expand the program that we're working with right now. In fact, what I think that would allow us to do would be to cover a total of about 10 businesses or organizations, including the ones that are already participating, not just for 3 to 6 months, but for an entire year, which would really incentivize, I think, more people to jump on if it's cheap and easy, again, for them to do so. Now, to apply for that grant, according to Dana Levenberg's office, we need a fiscal sponsor, and they suggested the town of Philipstown. We already have the very successful residential program. Most of the participating businesses are not just in the village of Cold Spring, but the town of Philipstown, so the town makes more sense in this case. And what that would entail on your part would basically be the pass-through entity for those funds. As it's set up with CET and the funding we've gotten through them currently, the way it works is that the individual businesses contract with CRP. So the contract is theirs individually. But for these first few months, CET is paying that bill on their behalf. So I anticipate something similar if this were to come, this funding were to come through, and if the town of Philipstown were to agree to be the fiscal sponsor. So the contract wouldn't be wouldn't be the town's, in other words. It would continue to be with the individual businesses, but the town would pick up the bill essentially until the funding is exhausted, which I would anticipate happening over the course of about a year. So that would entail writing checks to CRP over the course of that year to pay for those hauling costs, to pay for the bins, that's a startup cost, potentially liners, some of them use liners, some of them don't. One other thing we've put into the proposal, and this was on the suggestion of Dana Levenberg's office, would be some funds to promote the program, right? To highlight the businesses and organizations that are already doing it, and to do more outreach to the ones that might be brought on board. So we've put a few $1,000s into the budget proposal for that purpose as well. The bulk of it would be for the hauling costs, with a little bit to promote the program. And that, in the document I just gave you, the estimate for all of that is about $27,000. I've already sent that over to Dana Levenberg's office. They think that's perfectly in line with the range of funding that might be available through this kind of thing. We have no guarantee of getting it, of course, but if we do, it would be fantastic if the town of Philipstown could be the fiscal sponsor. In fact, us identifying a fiscal sponsor would be a condition for us applying for the grant in the first place.
I would certainly support it, and I'm sure the board would support it as well. The residential program has been a success. My question would be is what's going to happen when the grant runs out? And then, we can't absorb a $30,000 per year expense, but I'm sure you guys have a plan in place to try to figure out a funding opportunity. Or
Absolutely. Well, we would certainly, at that point, love to have more funding for the program, but all of the businesses that we've contacted, we've been perfectly clear that this is a long-term cost for them. Right. So when the funding runs out, the businesses and organizations would absorb that cost. It's not a lot. I think, for the vast majority of them, they're going to be on the low end of the rate sheet that CRP gave us, so it's $120 to $180
their garbage bill is going to drop, and this bill is going to come in.
Exactly. Their garbage bill should offset the cost for them because they're not paying as much for that.
The community is to be acknowledged as well. So.
Exactly. It's a pretty low price, but they're all aware that they will eventually be paying that themselves.
Anything from the board?
That was my question, the sustainability if the funding dries up. So as long as they're going to cover the costs, then the town is not burdened. I'm fully supportive as a member of the Food Scrap Advisory Committee. This initiative is a great initiative for our community. So I think it's only makes sense for our businesses to be part of it.
Sure. That's the bulk of the real scraps is the businesses, I would assume. Is Foodtown a participant? Or?
They are not, but they would be a big get. And in fact, they might be required to. There's the state law that has been around for a few years now, but they've been ratcheting down the amount that, it's basically by tonnage. If you're any kind of entity that produces a certain tonnage of food scraps, you're now required to recycle those food scraps. This year, it went down to half a ton. So Foodtown might actually be in that category now. They have to do it. In which case, we would love to have them on board, but no, they're not at this point.
Okay. I mean, I would fully support it. If you want to connect us with, it would be Victoria at Dana Levenberg's office.
I would love to have a good connection there because I don't have a contact there.
Okay, so we can make that connection for you.
Thank you.
Anything
John,
else from the? Sure. Yeah.
Just because Jeff, as you know, we're all very conscious of adding administrative burden to Town Hall. You're not asking us for money, but you are asking us for help. It's possible, would it not be possible for the CRP hauler to give us one bill for all of the participants so that we could get it down to a monthly check?
That would be nice. I haven't confirmed that with CRP yet, that they can do that. That would be the easiest way to do it, if it were one check rather than 10 each month. That'd be the goal. But
There's 5 participants now, or 5 or 6?
There are 5 that are signed on at this point, although one of them, Hudson Valley Shakespeare, is not participating in the funding. So at this point, 4 that are participating in the funding.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure we could figure it out. The less clerical end of it, of course, would be, there has been quite a bit of support from the climate smart community that has helped with this whole process. So I don't see it being a big burden, but I shouldn't say that to Sue, but of course Sue's going to want to hang.
Look at Tara's expression.
Don't tell her I said that. We'll figure it out, but I think it's a worthwhile program for sure.
Thank you. And to further reduce the burden, we would, all of the outreach, all the logistics, aside from writing the checks, we would handle. Yeah,
Okay,
okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
Anything from the public? Any questions from the public?
Good idea, Jeff.
Next on the agenda is a resolution approving the lease agreement from XEROX for new equipment at the town hall and the highway department.
Okay, been working on this for many months, myself and Tara. Our monthly cost is gonna go actually down from what we're paying today,
And printers will work?
and we're getting all new equipment. Huh? Well, you had an input of what equipment you wanted though, right? Yeah, so, Tara, we had meetings with Xerox, and we went over every single printer and copier and so forth like that, and Tara requested certain pieces of equipment, so that's what we're gonna get. Anyway, the price that we're paying today will be less than what we're currently, the new contract will be less than what we're currently paying today, and the price per copy is considerably a lot less than it was as well.
A fee?
Yeah, what is it? It's here, 380 something a month, or wait, here it is, 384 a month.
Can I get a motion to approve me signing a contract with Xerox for new equipment for Town Hall and the Highway Department?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
This is for a 5-year contract.
5 years. Thank you. Thank you, Bobby. Thank you, Tara.
Next is a resolution designating the Putnam County Press as the town's paper of record, and simultaneously some legal notices and similar items of information will be sent to the Highlands Courier.
Okay, so we were notified that the Putnam County News will no longer be printed. We do advertise in the Highland Current, but it doesn't meet New York State standards because it's a free press. So we have to go to a paper that is subscription or a purchase, which we did investigate that this does qualify and it meets the requirements. So can I get a motion that the town use the Putnam County Press as our paper of record, and also copy the Highland Current?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor? And I vote aye.
John, can I just make?
Sure.
These are the same papers. This is the press that is the paid subscription paper. This is what's called the Times. They are exactly the same paper. It's a twin, but once we get our notices in there, they will be in both.
But we want people to buy the one they have to pay for, so not get the free.
Or you could sign up for an email, and it could be a flip book in your email every week. I know how to do that. I'd be happy to have a word with you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is a resolution authorizing the return of escrow for Gatekeepers Management, 3691 Route 9, Cold Spring, New York, 10516, tax map number 7-1-4.
So Bobby mentioned this in the planning board report. We do have a letter from the planning board that they have satisfied this. I get a motion to return to escrow for Gatekeepers Management, 3691 Route 9, Cold Spring, New York.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. And I vote aye.
Next is a resolution authorizing the return of escrow for Jaymark Jewelers, 3612 Route 9, Cold Spring, New York, tax map number 17-1-46.
Same, we have a letter from the planning board. They've satisfied their agreement. Can I get a motion that the town board release the funds for Jaymark Jewelers, 3612 Route 9, Cold Spring, New York?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I vote aye.
Next is a resolution authorizing the donation of $300 to the Nelsonville Fish and Fur Club for the annual Kids Fishing Derby, which is scheduled for May 3rd.
Can I get a motion supporting the $300 donation to Nelsonville Fish and Fur?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
This is what we've done every year.
Can't we give them an increase?
What?
Can't we give them an increase?
You want to kick in?
I'd be happy to add $30 to this.
Thanks. So it's
This
three.
is the same for the last 10 years.
So it's 3:30 because Nat's
Yeah.
kicking in $30.
There we go.
Next is a resolution authorizing the supervisor to sign the outreach worker services contract between the Putnam County Office for Senior Resources and the Town of Philipstown for the year 2026.
So this is something we do every year. We did have a review. Jason requested a review last year, and they did produce numbers, and there was satisfactory numbers within
Yes.
Putnam and in Philipstown. So I would support that we authorize me to sign the contract between Putnam County Office of Senior Resources and the Town of Philipstown. Can I get a motion?
So, yes. So
Second.
moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I vote aye.
Next is a discussion and a resolution on an update of the 2017 Equal Protection Resolution.
So, I promise I won't break my glasses tonight like I did the last time, but first of all, I want to thank the committee, and I want to list the names of the people that were on this committee. From the community, you had Susan Ospach, is that correct pronunciation? Thank you. Victor Borgos, Alexandra Kane, Liz Corio, Daniel Noble, and Madeline Ray. Our staff member was Cecily Hall. Thank you, Cecily. And from the town board, we had Ned, Nat, and Judy. Yes. I'm sorry?
Did you mention Madeline?
I did.
That's it. Good.
First of all, I can't thank this group enough. You took a very contentious topic, something that was heated throughout the country, not just here. And I did speak with Victor. I want to send you all to Washington, and maybe we can settle some problems in Washington, because the effectiveness of this group was amazing. I've read through the policy. We've got a couple changes that were suggested by the town attorney, our human resources attorney, as well as our justice, Angela from our justice here. So there's some red line changes. They're all minor wording. I'm sure, Ned, you will read through the proposal. So I'm really happy with the way it's been proportioned and tailored to apply to the town of Philipstown. I think it fits perfectly. My biggest concern always is the safety and the security of our employees. I shouldn't say my employees, but our employees. This gives them a direct path as to the way they should receive, if in fact it does happen, the way that they should proceed. It's to contact Tara. Tara is meant to contact me. If I'm unavailable, be the deputy supervisor, as well as the town attorney. So it takes the liability and the concern off of them and puts it on me or my office. I'm willing to accept that. I don't think it's something that I'm going to ever face. And as I said to Cecily, if they try to take a child out of the rec department, they better make room for me, because there's a 200-pound supervisor going with them. And Cecily's going as well. So I am thrilled with what was put together. This group did a wonderful job putting this all together. So Ned, would you like to read you have the red line, the final version that
I
came?
believe so.
You all have
Yes,
both of them,
and
yes.
it's about 6 pages, so, well, 5 pages, so, buckle up. The last time I read to a room like this, I was in my daughter's 2nd grade class, and there were pictures to help, so.
You want your guitar maybe?
Yeah,
You
maybe
could
I
play a
could.
few notes.
It'll be all right. But I do want to just echo what John said before I get to this. This is the result of really, really good, open-minded, civic-minded, and open-hearted work. Civic-minded and open-hearted work by all the volunteers. And we had some rigorous debate, and we had no arguments. You know, the difference there. It was really inspiring to be a part of, and I am very grateful. Philipstown isn't good. It's got good people in it, as we know. So anyway, all right. Whereas the town of Philipstown is committed to ensuring the safety, dignity, and equal protection of all residents, visitors, and employees, regardless of race, religion, gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation, or immigration status. Whereas this policy is intended to ensure compliance with constitutional protections, including the Fourth Amendment, and thereby maintain the trust between residents and local government, protect personal information collected for municipal purposes, and ensure that town resources are not used for civil immigration enforcement absent a judicial warrant or court order. Whereas town departments, boards, and their employees may maintain a wide range of personally identifying information unrelated to immigration status, and improper sharing of such information can expose residents to serious harm. Whereas the town has recognized interest in maintaining the safety and security of its facilities, which include public and generally non-public areas, to ensure its residents and visitors have equal access to all of its programs and services. And whereas the town has non-public areas, including but not limited to the building department, the highway department, and its parking area, and parts of town hall which are not open to the public, and whereas the town's community and recreation center facilities, the Depot Theater, and the Continental Village Clubhouse and other facilities regularly function as non-public areas in that participation in events held in those areas frequently require prior registration or are subject to such other limitations to access as the town board may from time to time impose. Now be it resolved that no Town of Philipstown department, officer, employee, or agent acting in their official capacity, nor contractor of the town when on town business, shall request or maintain information about the immigration status of any person, except as required under federal law for employment eligibility verification. Notwithstanding the foregoing, a person may voluntarily provide information about their immigration status if they deem it necessary in order to obtain a service from the town, which information shall be stored as required by law. Now be it further resolved that it shall be the policy of the town to admit federal immigration authorities into any non-public or limited access area only when presented with a judicial warrant or court order. Now be it further resolved that in the event that any town employee is served with an administrative warrant from federal immigration authorities, they shall not admit or consent to the entry of any federal immigration authorities into a non-public area or provide or consent to the seizure of any town record, but shall promptly deliver the warrant to the town clerk, who shall promptly notify the supervisor and council of the town to the town of the receipt of the document. And now be it further resolved that in the event that any town employee is served with a judicial subpoena or administrative subpoena from federal immigration authorities, that the employee promptly deliver the subpoena to the town clerk, who shall promptly notify the supervisor and council to the town of receipt of the document. Neither a judicial nor administrative subpoena shall provide access to a non-public area or the basis for consent to the seizure of town records. Now we're on to definitions here. For the purposes of this policy, these definitions relate to civil enforcement by federal immigration authorities. Administrative subpoena, also called an immigration subpoena, is a formal written document directed at a person to compel 1, his, her, their testimony as a witness in an investigation, or 2, the production of evidence by a person or entity at a future point in time. An administrative subpoena is issued by a federal agency such as the Department of Homeland Security and can be signed by an administrative judge an immigration judge or an immigration officer. An example of an administrative subpoena is annexed to this policy for reference purposes as Exhibit 1. Administrative warrant is a formal written document authorizing a law enforcement officer from a designated federal agency, such as an ICE agent from the Department of Homeland Security, to make an arrest, search, or a seizure. It does not authorize an arrest, search, or seizure within a non-public area. It is not signed by a federal judge. An example of an administrative warrant is annexed to this policy for reference purposes as Exhibit 2. Judicial subpoena is a formal written order directed at a person to compel 1, his, her, their testimony as a witness in court or in a deposition, or 2, the production of evidence under a penalty for failure to comply, and is usually for a future point in time. A judicial subpoena is issued by a federal court and can be signed by a court clerk or an attorney. A judicial subpoena signed by a judge is a court order. An example of a judicial subpoena is annexed to this policy for reference purposes as Exhibit 3. Judicial warrant means a formal written order authorizing a law enforcement officer to make an arrest, a seizure, or a search. A judicial warrant is issued by a federal court and signed by a federal judge or federal magistrate. An example of a judicial warrant is annexed to this policy for reference purposes as Exhibit 4. Non-public area is an employees-only area where members of the public are generally not allowed. Typical non-public areas are private offices, rooms and hallways that are locked, break rooms, storage rooms, and areas that need a key card or passcode to enter. Non-public areas also include those areas to which access is limited by monitored access through a locked door or by requirements such as pre-registration, ticketed events, or other publicly announced limitations for town facilities and for those areas the town maintains. Personal identifying information means any information collected by the town or an employee thereof in connection with the official business of the town concerning an individual which because of name, number, symbol, mark, or other identifier can be used to identify that person. Routine use for the purpose of disclosing personal information means any use of personal information relevant to the purpose for which it was collected, and which use is necessary to the legal duties of the department that collected or obtained personal information, or necessary for that department to operate a program specifically authorized by law. Section 1, scope. This policy applies to all town departments, boards, officers, employees, and agents acting in an official capacity, as well as town contractors during the execution of town business. Section 2, non-cooperation in civil immigration enforcement. Town resources, personnel, and facilities shall only be used to assist in civil immigration enforcement activities when required by a judicial warrant or court order. Section 3, data protection. No town department, board, officer, employee, or agent shall voluntarily disclose personal identifying information, including, but not limited to, a person's name, address, social security number, marital status, telephone number, or date of birth to federal immigration authorities unless required by judicial warrant or court order. And Section 4, access to non-public areas or limited access areas. Town employees shall only provide federal immigration authorities access to any non-public areas when presented with a judicial warrant or court order. Section 5, non-use of information. Personal identifying information possessed, controlled, or in the custody of the town for municipal purposes shall not be used for civil immigration enforcement unless required by judicial warrant or court order. Section 6, training and public notice. The town shall provide periodic training to officials and employees regarding this policy and shall make the policy publicly available. Section 7, oversight and reporting. The town shall post on its website and in those newspapers designated by the town as official publications for Philipstown, a quarterly summary of any request from federal immigration authorities for information, access, or assistance, and the town's response consistent with privacy laws. And that's a wrap.
So, I mean, I will certainly take comment from the board, but just a point that our human resources attorney made was that we should not add this to our handbook. It should just be an internal policy or procedure circulated to the town employees. The part about the contractors concerns me a little bit because when we go out to bid for work, this will have to be included in the bid documents. And how will it affect the stuff that we are already under with New York State bids? Like we have a New York State bid for paving, we're about to award some paving. They're gonna have to take part in this and they're gonna have to agree to it. So I'm not quite sure how that's gonna fall. So we're gonna have to look into that. The training, I think we could probably either have you provide it, or would you feel qualified, or Melissa as the human resources attorney? Could
There
you?
are also organizations.
There are?
There are.
That
We could outsource some of that.
Well, the interesting part is, April 20th is the town, the biggest group would be the town highway crew. They have their safety training on April 20th. If we could get something in place between now and then, I don't think this needs to be a long presentation. It's just a quick, here's the rules, you need to follow them. So I don't know if we need to outsource, or would you be comfortable, Mary Kate? Or?
In this circumstance, I think I would ask the board to see who's available to provide the training.
Sorry, Mary Kate.
Not a problem, Nat. Yeah, what I said is I think that the board should discuss whether or not, to consider some offers from providers of this type of training. I would be happy to participate in training, but I would want to do it with Melissa. I don't think I myself alone should do it, just because it's an interesting time.
Right.
In the legal landscape can change very quickly. So
Yeah, I don't see us
I
getting this
would
together.
have to have a partner in this.
Understood.
And I know that there's groups that their only purpose is this type of education. So I would ask the board to consider.
So I don't see that happening between now and April 20th, or do you think it can?
One of our committee members, Liz Corio, has arranged an initial consultation with an outfit that does this kind of work for April 16th. And it's just a sort of an introductory meeting.
To learn about their capacity.
but they may be able to do something quickly, I don't know, but that's a
Well,
start.
I just thought it would be convenient while they're
agree.
getting their annual safety training to add this on, because there will be, I don't know if there'll be some resistance from CSEA.
Yeah.
That they operate under, so I would think the April 20th date would be a hard goal to meet, so.
Could we distribute the policy at the April 20th date?
I mean, I'm not comfortable implementing a policy before we train the people on the policy. Am I wrong? I mean, I think that would be a common step. I mean, I'm happy to adopt it, vote to adopt it, but I think it should be contingent on satisfying the training requirements. I don't think it's fair to put an employee in a position that they're going to implement a policy, if in fact it happens, without prior training to the actual policy. I don't know.
I agree with you. I mean, that was my biggest concern, was the training
Right.
part of this whole thing. First of all, I'd like to say thank you for all the committee members that made this. Like, I think in the beginning of this, I wasn't really for it, but with this in front of us today, it's a big difference, and I'm more than happy to support it.
Thank you.
Yes, and thanks to Ned and Nat. It was a pleasure to work with them on this, their first time.
Two at a time.
Two at a time, only two at a time in a room, and the committee, which was, it was wonderful to work with this committee. They were so professional, and even though there were times when we got really, it got intense, they were all great, so thank you. A great group.
Can I just tack on for a sec to something that both of you said? I mean, this is, I think part of our job up here is to identify people in the community who can step up and be part of the jobs that we need to get done. And this was a remarkable, I mean, the number of the volunteers have been on previous committees, but Dan and Susan right over here behind you, Dennis, they stepped up and did an awful lot of drafting of the law here. Victor, my gosh, came in and with some law enforcement experience, told us what good law enforcement people do, as opposed to what we've been seeing recently. I mean, it was just a great committee. I'm amazed that this town has people that can step up and do things. And the passion on this woman over here, Alexandra, is awesome when it comes to, we weren't going to leave that meeting without a good policy. Thank you, Alexandra.
Lock the door.
Yes, and Cecily.
And Cecily, without
Hall,
Cecily,
I
we
really
wouldn't have.
gave us a really good perspective of the town.
Yeah, she's front line,
Yes.
as is Tara. And we were a little remiss by not questioning Tara, but you did have some input on it, so you have contributed as well. So there was a slight change based on wedding procedures that we do sometimes allow that to be a form of ID, correct, Tara? Is that?
It's a New York State approved form of identification if you're applying for a marriage license, is to supply a naturalization record.
Gotcha. Okay.
Right,
So-
I think the original copy said that we wouldn't retain any such information, but if somebody gives it to us,
If they offer it up.
yeah,
And it's
Right.
part of the permanent record,
then
so
we
I
have
can't
to
get
hold
rid
it,
of it.
right. So we
So
figured
that was one
out.
of the changes that Tara suggested, and Angela Tinsley was the constitutional changes. And Mary Kate, thank you to you for getting this around so quickly and for participating in the committee as well. So it worked out well. So we need to.
I just have a question
Sure.
for Mary Kate.
Oh, I thought it was too easy, but go ahead.
It was way too easy. Sorry. I have to listen. My turn. How does this affect FOIL law?
I would say.
Or FOIL law supersedes this, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Just checking.
Okay. So we need to set a path forward, which I'm comfortable adopting, passing this tonight with a contingent date of it being applied based on getting the training complete, and then we'll circulate it to the employees. People comfortable with that?
Yes.
Yes?
Dan, did you want to say something? Excuse me? Did you want to say something?
You had to do that now?
Sorry.
Dan, come to
Oh, Dan.
We're not litigating this tonight, then.
Suggestion. In the second whereas, would the board consider including the Fourth and 10th Amendments?
I don't know the 10th Amendment off the top of my head, if you'd
Well,
like
the
to.
10th Amendment is separation of powers. It's the federalism amendment. It says all authority that's not otherwise given to the federal government is reserved to the states. And the 10th Amendment is the constitutional foundation for the non-commandeering doctrine, which underlies a great deal of the legal, of the case law, including numerous Supreme Court cases, that validates exactly what we're doing here. So, as does the Fourth Amendment. I mean, you have with constitutional protection, so you're really including it, but I would just suggest that maybe you, with the Fourth, you also say 10.
Can I just make a suggestion? We leave it the way it is. We can always amend it later. Right.
I want to leave it that way because a lot of the material that we're anticipating,
We need to get one more mic.
so the policy is generally on what to do when confronted with a warrant or a subpoena. And these implicate search and seizure. We discussed in the committee the interplay of the 10th Amendment as well, the anti-commandeering doctrine that Dan just raised about how the federal government can't seize the assets of a state government to do its work. So I would like to leave it the way it is, because I do consider this a document more about search and seizure and what the rights are, and what rights don't extend into non-public spaces. And including, like, constitutional protections, including the Fourth Amendment, I read that as all of the Constitution and all the amendments are brought in, so, so.
Okay, so we'll leave it where we stand.
No more comments.
So we can make a motion.
Thanks, Nat. Okay, anything else to the board?
I just really quickly would like to add that we got a lot of feedback from the community throughout this process, and it was well received. It was helpful. It lit a fire a little bit, and I appreciate everybody who wrote and everybody who's attended these meetings.
Never lack comment, that's for sure. Okay, so we need to pick a date to implement. What do we feel would be a reasonable time frame? I don't see a giant rush to get it.
60 days, is that
60
make
days?
sense?
So,
Do you think, Liz, 60 days would be?
Sure that they,
So
yeah,
you-
we'll
you-
know more on Thursday once we
Okay.
speak with them, but I wouldn't think that any group that we're looking for help on this would have a problem.
so they would be able to take this policy, adapt a training program based on that. Maybe we could do it as an online training for a lot of the people. The highway crew will be an interesting group to get it through too, so. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that realistically. I mean, there's a lot of them. There's a lot of people, so. So we'll put a 60-day target, so we'll say the June meeting, we'll implement it at the June meeting. Does that make sense? What would be the date of the June meeting? Do we know?
The first Thursday in June.
I knew that.
It is June 4th.
Hey, that's my birthday.
Great.
Oh, we can't
Happy
have a
bir-
meeting on your birthday.
No, it's great. I'd love to. Yeah, I can think of no better way to turn 50.
So I'm going to entertain a motion to adopt the policy that we have in front of us. We don't need to read through it again, obviously, with an implementation date of the June 4th meeting. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Councilman Flaherty.
Aye.
Councilman Prentice.
Aye.
Councilman Roush.
Aye.
Councilwoman Farrell.
Aye.
And I vote aye. Thank you. Okay, now I have to find my
Next on the
agenda.
agenda is a discussion. Is a discussion regarding a response from the town to the Fjord Trail FEIS.
Okay, I don't need the agenda for that. So, without making this a 2-hour conversation, just to briefly give a background and a simple history. We all know what the Fjord Trail is. We all know what it was proposed to be, where it is now. So basically, the fjord discussion began decades ago, right here in Philipstown. The town of Philipstown was a big part of it. The legal process and the background, so HHFT released the DGIS on December 4th, 2024. The town was mentioned as an involved agency. We were given a 90-day period to respond, to which we did. We put a huge response together. We used the Conservation Board. We used a local planner. The town attorney was involved, and we did generate a gigantic list of questions and response. On 1/21/2026, New York State Parks, as the lead agency, released their finding statements in reference to the secret review of Fjord Trail. That started a clock for us to respond legally to the finding statements. So if you've read through the finding statements, frankly, I find a few of them absolutely ridiculous. First and foremost for me is who is the applicant. That I don't find ridiculous. I find it very important of who the applicant is, because that makes a big difference as to the process that they get through the town of Philipstown. One thing that really impacted me, not only as an EMS provider for a long time, but as the chief budget officer of the town of Philipstown, the response to the emergency services was that there will be no impact on the emergency services. So if you just think about even low-end numbers of what they're projecting is hundreds of thousands of additional people. So for somebody to say that hundreds of thousands of additional people coming to this community every year will not affect our emergency services is just a ridiculous statement. I can't swallow that, and I've been very vocal with our committee that's involved with Fjord Trail, so I certainly laid that out. I also think there is more to be done with the review of traffic. There's more to be done with the environmental review for what's going to happen in the Hudson River. There's certainly a visual impact on our community that will never be the same. I mean, if you go in the Hudson and you look at our shoreline, whether you like it or you don't like it, it's certainly going to be impacted. So there were I have a list, and I'm not going to go through them tonight. I read through them, and I have there's about 100 Post-it notes stuck to the side of it. So we are faced with a decision. So this window, Mary Kate, and correct me if I'm wrong, the window is a 3-month window from the release of the finding statements. It's 4 months, sorry. It's expiring first week of May. I did reach out to Peter Mullen from Fjord Trail on a recommendation from the town board to try to attempt to avoid what's called an Article 78. I was unsuccessful. I tried, I worked. One of the stipulations were to stay out of dockside, to start the trail at Little Stony Point, do a real review of what the emergency services impact was going to be, which I don't think has been done. If you read through the finding statements, there are mention of it, but it's a review after 2 years as to what the impact will be. And then what? What do we do at that point? So as the way I feel currently, we've exhausted any attempt to work out an agreement to avoid this. I hate the thought of spending money on a law firm to fight New York State Parks and Fjord Trail. But I think we've been painted into a corner, and if we don't do it, we're delinquent of our responsibilities. This is the one and only opportunity for us to contest this. If we let this window go, again, correct me if I'm wrong, if we let this window go, we never will have a legal attack or a legal review or a legal attempt at stopping Fjord Trail from coming, because currently they have permission to go straight into dockside. I just can't sit with that. And you know, we could lose the court case. We're going to invest a lot of money in this. There's a lot of legal front-loaded work, a lot of review that has to be done by our attorney. And if we approve it tonight, it will be with combination with the village attorney. We're going to go at this together, which we've done from the start. I'm hoping, I've had a conversation with the county executive. I'm hoping to get the county on board as well. I think it would speak volumes if Putnam County were involved in this. It's their emergency services. It's their sheriff's department, and ultimately, a Bureau of Emergency Services falls under Putnam County. We, as the town of Philipstown, cannot afford to provide an ambulance and fire trucks and police for an additional whatever 100,000 people that's going to be here. So that's where I stand. Anybody else? I'm sure there's other comments.
I just have a concern
Sure.
because I know about a year ago, the state controller said that the town of Philipstown, and the report is available online on the state controller's website. The first sentence, the first finding was that the board did not properly manage the town's finances. So this is not in the town budget. We don't know how much it's going to cost ultimately. Now, I know the town and the village are stretched for funding. We have a lot of infrastructure needs. I know I'm a pedestrian. There are many sidewalks that I have to avoid, walking from Nelsonville to Cold Spring. And I'm just concerned that this is going to be a cost during a time when federal funds are being cut across the country. It's impacting New York State. There are federal and state funding cuts in vital areas. There are people losing their benefits, food and health and veteran benefits. And I just wonder if this is a good use of taxpayer money. And it's not only going to cost us as Philipstown taxpayers and residents, Cold Spring taxpayers are going to be hit, New York State taxpayers. It's going to cost 3 times a person living here, this lawsuit. And I don't know if we're going to win. You're right. I don't know if we'll win. And what's the benefit to the town? We're going to burn some bridges and relationships instead of trying to work at a solution. You worked successfully to get $450,000 with the mayor for sidewalks. Do you think the New York State Department of Transportation or Governor Hochul is going to look favorably on that grant application if we sue the state, if we sue Governor Hochul's administration? I really don't think this is the appropriate time to do this. And I understand the pressure with a couple of weeks left, but spending money on lawyers and consultants when we have other needs in the town and villages is really, it's concerning to me. I'd like to know how the idea of filing the lawsuit came about. Whose idea was it?
Sure. So, well, first of all, to respond to your question about the budget, as you well know, the impact on our budget and the mismanagement that we were accused of was fully related to the Garrison Landing Water District, where we had no option but to buy water. So, and that's well known. There has been no mismanagement of anything else.
It did say, though, we should budget for spending.
Right, but which we couldn't budget for buying water for 2 years. But first of all, to respond, I don't think we can afford it either, but I don't think we can afford not to do it, because this is a time in the history of this town that if we don't do something now, we can't do it 2 years from now, we can't do it 3 years from now. We have no option but to do it right now or forever. If we don't file this, then we agree with the finding statements and the results of the finding statements. We did just receive a large sum of money from a movie production, so I think it was perfect timing that we did receive that. And it was nobody's idea to file an Article 78. It's the only option at this point to do it. It's the only way we can say we don't agree with the findings in the finding statement. I can't imagine what it would cost us. We currently, we're about $4 million, I think, now for emergency services. You add 200,000 people on the low end per year to this community, I can't think of what that budget would be. I don't see, first of all, we can't afford to put another ambulance on the street, and if it's going to Fjord Trail 10 times a day, it's not going to be here for the residents that are paying the taxes to put the ambulance on the street. So again, the last thing I want to do is spend money on a lawsuit, but I don't think we can afford not to spend the money currently.
So, John, I'd just like
Sure.
to make the following. I am as loath as anyone to enter into any kind of a court proceeding, but I think the assertion in the FEIS that there's going to be no impact on the emergency services is an irrational statement. And I wish we had other options to try to discuss that point and have that language corrected, but Article 78s are made for this. This is what, my brief understanding of Article 78 is that if you have a problem with some information in a document that you've got to go this way, And I think it's the only way we can correct that language, or it could cost us, as you point out, down the road, a great deal of money to have to provide the emergency services. So,
Which we are mandated to do.
I support you in your pursuit of an Article 78. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I would add that there are a number of issues that you can find with in the FGEIS. If we're sticking with emergency services, one of the points that's made in that document is that that there's no likelihood that there'll be an increase in injuries or incidents on the trail, but it's people coming to the community that also will have bumps and falls and
Equals volume, no matter how you look.
and they all come through Cold Spring. They all come to Cold Spring, and the biggest draws for the attractions on the biggest attractions on the Fjord Trail, length of the Fjord Trail, are on our end of it. You know, so I'm reluctant to do this as well. I share your feelings, and I think that a lot of the input in the FGEIS regarding our community is, I don't say this antagonistically, but sort of glib, and I think it requires further, a more rigorous response.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm in agreement as well. I mean, I talked to many people, environmentalists and so forth like that. They could build this boardwalk, whatever you want to call it, on the Hudson. I don't see how that cannot impact the environment as much as the statement is saying here. I think there's a lot of still many unknowns, and I said this many years ago. I don't know what the big rush is right here. Then we've asked to take a pause after they get to Little Stony Point, and if they're not even willing to try to do that, I don't think we have much of a choice than to do what we're trying to do here this evening. I mean, so I'm reluctant as well. No one really wants to do this, but I think it's our last resort.
Right, and the Village of Cold Spring is the hub for the town of Philipstown, no matter how you look at it. And the people that are directly impacted are really going to be impacted hard. If you live where I live, if you live in Garrison, you're going to avoid the Village of Cold Spring when you know that the population's, when the groups are going to be here. But if you live in the Village of Cold Spring, you need to be able to move around, and it's going to be. I can't imagine. I mean, you go on a Saturday now, and it's difficult. We all know to avoid Lower Main Street on a Saturday or Sunday, especially in the fall. And I can't imagine more people being here, and especially the numbers. And I went back to this. I support Fjord Trail, Little Stony Point North. At one point, I supported the whole thing. But that section between Little Stony Point and Dockside, when I saw the visualizations of that and the images of it, and just thought, oh my God, it's going to be its own draw. It's going to be its own tourist attraction. I would love to, my father, as he was aging, loved the Hudson River. I couldn't get him near the river, but it would have been ideal to walk him on that thing. But I think the proximity to New York City and the 8 million people that live there, we are going to be overwhelmed. That section of the trail itself will overwhelm the town of Philipstown and the Village of Cold Spring. That's not going to change. And if we lose the court case, we lose the court case. I'm going to be able to sleep at night knowing that we've exhausted every legal option we can, and every negotiation that we can is started years ago. We had an agreement, we lost the agreement. So this is it. I don't think we have another choice but to make this happen. So
Can you just clarify, Supervisor? You did ask for a pause, and we got the pause, right?
no,
Was
we
that-
don't get the pause. They would not agree to that. They would not sign to that. We
But
did
they
not.
did say that there's not going to be a dockside connector in the next 2 years. They're working on
It's only
the
because
trail north right now.
Right, but when I asked a timeline, Peter was here last, I asked for a timeline, they could not provide that. I can't take that, and if this window closes, which it will, they can say, look, we're not doing that. We're gonna go straight through. Do I trust Peter? I do. It's nothing personal. This isn't a personal attack. This is a legal approach. This is the reason the system is in place, and we have to take it. I don't see any other option. There's no other way for us to legally protect the town of Philipstown and the Village of Cold Spring from the trail. So
May I add one thing about the pause? I remember that conversation as well. And in fact, it came up in the campaign as part of what I discussed publicly. But there's a response in the FGEIS from the lead agency that says specifically that there is no need for a 2-year pause. I think it's a bit of a phantom or a figment, and that's important to know. Especially if there's no sense of when the southern portion of the trail will begin, then there's no sense of when the 2-year pause will begin, which is a tough way for a community to plan for its future if you have no idea when something starts or pauses.
The intention of the original pause was to build everything to Little Stony Point. All the resources, then leave for 2 years. Let the dust settle, see what the crowds will be, then come back to the municipalities with a plan to go from Little Stony Point to Dockside. That was not accepted. There was no ability or no commitment to sign any binding agreement to that. So, and it was there. We gave that option. We worked and tried to negotiate something, and it's failed. So. Anything? Yes. Anything? We're not going to make this a 2-hour debate on Fjord Trail. We've been down this road a million times, but I'll take a few comments. So go ahead.
Should I come up?
Yes.
Please. Maybe we can put this committee on it.
Hi, my name's Liz Corio. I'm a resident of Philipstown. So you stated, Supervisor, that it was nobody's idea. When did the concept of introducing this agenda item tonight and the clock ticking, when did that really become like paramount in your mind?
When the FEIS was released,
Okay.
we started the clock then.
Got it. So how come tonight is the first time that most of the public, I'm pretty informed, that most of the public is aware that A, this clock exists, B, that this is, as you put it, the town's last resort to make its process heard. I'm very concerned, as you know, about transparency. I'm extremely concerned that a vote of this nature and this magnitude is happening without even the words Article 78 being mentioned on the agenda.
It is on our agenda.
It says Article 78 on the agenda?
What is the Fjord
It says-
Trail discussion? Right. I'm not sure of that answer, but we've been discussing it internally for a long time.
Yeah, but if this is not an internal discussion, it's a public deliberation.
It is tonight. It's a
Yeah,
public discussion.
it is, but I'm concerned that the public doesn't have enough advance notice that
It's
this was.
not a public vote, though. It's a
No, you're
town
right.
vote.
You're absolutely right. But I don't know. If you have been thinking about this and it's been weighing on your mind for 90 days, it would have been nice for the public to have heard a little bit more. That was my first point. The other point I wanted to make is that maybe you could educate me about times when a board member needs to recuse themselves regarding a discussion and a vote such as this.
I'm not prepared to make that presentation
Okay.
this evening.
So,
Do you have a specific question?
yes, I believe that, Ned, all due respect, that you should have been asked to recuse yourself or offered to do so, given that you are a supporter on the website of Protect the Highlands, which is the opposition group to this, to the Fjord Trail. So I appreciate your remarks. They were well put. However, I do think that there's a conflict of interest here, and you should have recused yourself.
I appreciate your comments.
Thanks.
Thank you. Yes.
Christine Furch, I live in Philipstown. I thank you all for all your diligent, hard work. The more this conversation went on this evening, the more confused I got. I don't know if we have a lawsuit because we want some impact on ambulance corps identified, if we want something to go from Dockside to Stony Point, if we don't want 100,000 people showing up. I don't know what it is anymore.
I think I was pretty clear, Christine.
I do
I'm
not agree.
sure
I've been
what-
paying very close attention, and I think all those issues I just said were noted, and I've now lost track. Let me finish, I'm almost done.
Sure.
Okay. I don't know what the odds of such an expensive lawsuit being pursued are of winning. It sounds extremely expensive. I agree very much with the councilwoman. I am very concerned about how this is going to look. I think it feels like I very much disagree that this has been a rushed process, a glib process. We're all up to here, hearing about this process for years and years. I think the Fjord people have been nothing but responsive, collaborative, attempting to work in a partnership way. I don't think anything, like, if we're just trying to change a sentence, we're going to pursue $100,000 lawsuit or whatever because a sentence needs to be changed. I cannot believe these people won't change a sentence. That's what's said tonight, right? Because we don't like the language in this thing, the sentence about no impact on the emergency services.
I just briefly went through the finding statement. What I would
Okay.
suggest you do is go home and read the finding statement so
sure
you
will.
understand
I sure
what
will. And
is
I'd like
being
you to hear what
presented.
I'm saying now, because I don't think
I'm
I'm the only
listening.
one who feels this way. I'll go home and read anything you want me to, but I think I'm articulating points worth your considering, and I thank you for hearing me out.
I appreciate your comments. Thank you. Yes. Okay, we're going to take two more. So go ahead, Sue. Go ahead.
So, I just want to say I read the DGIS, I read the FGIS, I read the finding statements, and I am informed. And the idea of glib doesn't even come close. Their answers were dismissive. They treated us like we were ignorant, and I felt disrespected. And I believe that our board has our back in saying that they think they should take this window, and I think they should do. Thank you.
We'll take one more. Yeah. John, you had your hand up. John Masick had his hand up on the last round. And then we'll take you, Travis. We'll take one more. Okay, thank you. Then we won't listen to you. Thank you. We're done.
Thank you, Board, for giving me the chance to speak. John Masick, a resident of Garrison, 20-year resident of Philipstown. Made a couple notes after finding out about this meeting tonight and coming from another meeting, so sorry I was late. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm a resident who cares deeply about responsible government, transparency, and the long-term well-being of our community. I'm concerned about the possibility of this town initiating an Article 78 lawsuit using taxpayer dollars without clear public explanation of the legal basis, the expected cost, or the potential impact on our municipal budget. Litigation of this kind is often expensive and unpredictable, and any funds spent on it are funds that cannot be used for infrastructure, emergency services, or community services that residents rely on. And I know emergency services, it's a huge part of this, is why you're going through this process, but it's affecting, the money we're going to spend on this is taking away from what we could be spending it on.
Okay, but I just got to comment that, because if we have to add one more BLS unit to the town of Philipstown, you're looking at about $700,000 per year. So if we spend 15 to 20 on this lawsuit and they take a real deep dive into the impact, and Fjord or State Parks is forced to implement, we asked in the DGIS response for them to provide a BLS ambulance at Duchess Manor. It was completely ignored. Completely ignored. So do you think it's fair for us to take on as the infrastructure for an $800,000 addition of another ambulance? Or should we just tell the residents of Philipstown, sorry, the ambulance is on Fjord Trail, because there's 250,000 people coming next year?
Yeah,
What do you think
the numbers
is...
you keep quoting are a little bit different. So
What number?
Well, 250, 200. You've been throwing some different
It's
numbers.
been as high as 800,000. The data review committee had numbers 800,000.
I just want to get my points across here real
Sure.
quick, John. I don't want to argue.
Sure.
I'm concerned about the process, as Liz mentioned earlier. Tonight's agenda lists a discussion item, but not a vote. Residents deserve advance notice when the town is considering major legal action. Decision of this scale should be made with full transparency and public comment. So thank you for the chance to speak here. And a clear understanding of the financial and operational implications. There are also questions about the conflicts of interest that were brought up and who was involved with what. When people have personal or organizational affiliations connected in a matter under consideration, the public deserves clarity on how those conflicts are being handled. Finally, I do want to acknowledge that the Fjord Trail project has gone through many years of public engagement in the full CEQA process. Local feedback has already shaped the project, including commitments around traffic monitoring and including commitments around the Fair Streak sidewalk grant match, which is huge.
Yeah, agree.
I think my request tonight is simple. Before any vote is taken, please provide residents with a full explanation of the legal rationale, the projected cost, the funding source, and the expected outcomes of pursuing this litigation. The community deserves full transparency, fiscal responsibility, and a process that reflects the seriousness of this decision. And that's what I wanted to get across tonight, because I think getting this last minute just wasn't appropriate.
Mary Kate, would you like to elaborate a little bit about the process and an estimate on what we are preparing to put forth?
So, in a regular lawsuit, say for a breach of contract, or you think maybe you were defrauded by a business partner, the cost of the lawsuit, it occurs in stages spread throughout the litigation. You have the initial research to figure out the framework of your injury, the breach of contract, fraud. You do a little analysis to know whether or not you've run out of time to bring the lawsuit. You start to sketch in your legal argument, but all you need to do is say, I have a sense that I have been wronged, so I'm going to serve this complaint and start working toward my legal remedy. You go through discovery, that's another big outlay of money. Summary judgment, where both sides go to the court and say, here's our whole case, all cards on the table. We win, they lose. If the court says, no, it's not clear to me, I see a question of fact, then you go to trial. The process takes 2.5 years. If you go to an appeal in the second department, prepare to wait 2 years to even get on the calendar. Okay? That's a conventional lawsuit. They cost a fortune, they take a long time, and the money is spread throughout because the work changes throughout the process. You draft your complaint, you go to discovery, you make your legal argument, you make your factual finding at trial. An Article 78 proceeding is a different kind of lawsuit. It's to annul or remand for further proceedings an administrative determination on the grounds that it was arbitrary and capricious. Same meaning as irrational. What you don't do when you challenge an administrative determination is file the Article 78 and say, Your Honor, this is crazy. Doesn't make any sense. Those get dismissed because they're based on generalized community opposition. Successful Article 78s have had the groundwork laid in building the administrative record. Here, the town and the village did that work when they had their analysts go through the DEIS and submit that report. We're not just jumping in saying, this can't be true. We've already had that work done by people who are competent to read the document, pinpoint what doesn't seem right to them, go through the process of building the administrative record where we won't come in and say, this can't be right. There's more of an analytical basis that's already been built. When you file a regular lawsuit, oftentimes people it's kind of like throwing a coin down a well to see what happens. Personally, I don't agree with that approach, but if you have like an idea in your mind that you could win, that's the basis. When you file an adversary proceeding, the record built in the administrative proceeding is the universe. Remember what I said, you build your legal argument kind of toward the end of your case. You've been through discovery, maybe you realized you maybe had a different kind of wrong than what you started with, you amend your complaint, In an adversary proceeding, they're front-loaded. That legal argument that you go through the whole lawsuit, to get to, that's all done up front. And that's where a large part of the work that I will be doing for the town will take place. So when the crowd and the board expresses concern over costs, yes, any legal action is expensive. The Article 78, the work is done up front. The drafting the parsing of the record and the research, that is all going to be done in the next several weeks. Okay? I'm not saying that after, we get everything filed, we're done, and we just sit back and wait. That's not the case. Litigation is always uncertain. No lawyer will ever say, it'll cost $50,000. That's never done because we don't know. Okay? I might dig in and maybe come back to the board and say, I don't see anything. From the conversation of the board, it sounds that the emergency services, that there's something there. And I'll know more about that when I've read all of our expert reports and the villages and the applicants. When we've done the legal research on what is the standard to find something irrational, their terms of art in terms of an environmental impact statement. The work has to be done up front, and the burden of the legal bill will be substantially felt up front. Motion practice could follow. That big discovery bill that we all worry about if anyone's been in a legal lawsuit, in theory, discovery is not allowed in special proceedings. You have the administrative record. We were all there, and it was a public proceeding. So you can have bitter litigation in special proceedings. They tend to be a more straightforward and faster litigation than a big fraud action or a breach of contract or an employment litigation. Like the special proceedings, when they're coming from an appeal of administrative determination, they are a lot of work. They do take time. They are somewhat more, I don't want to say reliable, or even predictable, but the up and down and uncertainty of like anything could happen, witnesses could show up and big courtroom battles, there is unlikely to happen in a special proceeding.
Thank you. And we do have a cost, sorry? Okay, I think we're going to take meeting up here, okay? And then. Okay, so I was getting there, thank you. We had a cost estimate, and they can't give us a number because you don't know.
Yeah.
We have an estimate between $15,000 and $20,000 in the initial filing. So that's to do the legwork, the research, and to submit the Article 78.
Right.
What's the largest number?
We're not going to just start. If you'd like to speak, come up to the microphone. Thank you. Yes, Susan. Briefly.
Good evening. My name's Susan Ansbach. I had no idea this was going to be on the agenda. It just came out yesterday. Didn't say anything, as the other gentleman said, about Article 78. I'm not sure what date you said was the final date. I really don't have a position on whether we should file or not, but it does seem like it's somewhat noteworthy, and it might be a very big deal whether it brings adverse or positive publicity. I don't know whether it's more than 20,000 or less, and I'm just wondering what the timetable was, because it seems like it might be a good idea to give people a chance to come forward if they do want to be heard one way or the other on this.
We've heard the Fjord argument for
No, not on
for
the Fjord,
decades.
on whether the board should
that's where it's
file an
gonna
Article
that's where it's
70.
going to end up. But you have an enormous amount of work to do.
I do, and the 4-month limitation, it's a statute of limitations. And again, in civil litigation, breach of contract, it's 6-year statute. Negligence, like regular negligence, 3 years. Professional liability, I don't know. But the thing about this,
What is the filing? I missed the initial.
It's-
May what?
so
Is it May or April?
we're aiming for May 7th.
But our deadline to file is May 7th?
Yes, because we are being conservative. If you burn a statute There is no coming back from that. That is an arbitrary cutoff of lawsuits when they can be filed. And New York State, in its wisdom, made it very difficult to sue the government, and one of the ways they did that was by these short statutes. So you can't, I think there was a question of when it came to the
No,
board.
no, I understand. All I'm saying is,
Yeah.
I really don't have a position at this point on whether this, is good or bad idea. It just seems a bit quick to not mention the day before. It's on here as a discussion. It doesn't say anything about Article 78 or joining a lawsuit, and I think it might have been prudent to at least give a week, and if we have a month before we have to file conservatively, maybe there's a way to accommodate people and give them a chance to be heard. There may be many people who are in favor of this that you don't know about that would like to come and join, the conversation, and then there may be others who think they haven't been heard.
Have you read the finding statement?
Excuse me?
Have you read the finding statement?
As I said, I've read portions of. I'm not saying how I feel on the issue. I just feel like the gentleman said it was somewhat shocking to come in and find out there's an Article 78 on the agenda when it came out yesterday and said nothing about voting to file a lawsuit, basically. We're filing a lawsuit whether it's going to be expensive or not. We're filing a lawsuit. There's a lot of issues with that, and it would seem like perhaps we could have a little bit of time to have people be heard one way or the other. I don't know that.
Appreciate
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Can I weigh in? It seems Liz brought up my name and John as well. I think maybe it makes sense for me to speak a little bit to that issue. My name is, in fact, on the website of Protect the Highlands. It was there, or Protect the Hudson. Highlands or Hudson? I'm sorry. PTH. And it was, I agreed to have it there at the start of that organization. I used to go to meetings of that organization and participate, and I haven't for a long time, at least 2 years. I had a sign, I had a green sign that had Fjord Trail ? And other people in the organization had a sign that had Fjord Trail with a line across it. You've seen those around. And I declined to put that up there because I didn't believe that was the right approach. I thought saying no to a whole thing was ineffective and was unfair. I thought questioning something made a lot of sense. The current has really done very little. I'm a journalist, right? So I take a journalist's eye at this. The current has been asleep from the start. It's been telling people stuff, but it hasn't been analyzing anything. It hasn't been digging. There's been no rigorous analysis of this project, which is the biggest thing to come to us in eons. And so I thought questioning would lead to a better product. And if you remember, when I was running for this position that I'm in here, I talked about, and I put in the current, that I support up ahead, the northern part, fine, do it. But let's put a pause, let's compromise, let's build some real sidewalks north from the village of Cold Spring. There isn't a person around here who doesn't want a sidewalk, and who doesn't think that things could be ameliorated somewhat by real sidewalks. And why is a sidewalk? So why are we adverse to that, but we're gonna go put something in the river? It is, I don't know how many orders of magnitude easier to build a sidewalk. I've learned that it is expensive to build a sidewalk, more expensive than I thought, but I can't imagine, right? So I real commitment to questioning this thing and taking taking steps. Now, does that make me unsuitable to weighing in on issues related to this? I don't know. We have to be careful. You know, MJ, we see a certain legislator walk around with a hat that says FT on it. I've had plenty of conversations walking around in public with that legislator with that hat. Now, I don't care, but should that mean that legislator should not get to weigh in on these types of issues? I don't know. I think we should be careful about that kind of thing.
The community is so small that if we were forced to recuse ourselves on items that we've ever had involvement with, none of us could do these jobs that we're in.
I have no ongoing involvement with that organization. I promote them in no way at all. I have not been to any meetings at all for at least 2 years. I don't know what I'm supposed. I can scrub my name from their website. I can ask for it to be taken down if people think that poisons the well. I don't mind doing that. But I don't apologize for insisting on questioning. And I don't think that I'm in hot water here as I need to recuse myself. I don't know. Mary Kate, I don't know if you have a thought on this.
No, the standard for a council person to recuse from a matter is very high. Like John said, you live in the community. Like the standard is whether or not I mean, not the standard, but like the classic scenario is a council person will have a sign on their lawn, about, saying whether they're for or against a project that's before their board, like planning board or something. The question is whether or not the board member can answer exercise their judgment. They can have opinions on something, but they can still also perform their duty to the town.
In the past.
It,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
In the past, when we've had a question of recusal, it usually involved financial benefit.
Exactly.
Right. If somebody had a financial benefit based on their ability up here, then
Yeah.
obviously you would have to recuse yourself.
Right.
I've had to recuse myself from building projects because I had the opportunity, but because of the fact I'm a builder doesn't make me have to recuse myself. But if I had a financial connection to it, then I certainly would have to recuse myself, so, which we've done. So.
And I have no financial connection to the Fjord Trail or to PTH at all. None. I don't know what else you want from me. Should we all hold ourselves,
I think you've done well. Thank you. Thank you.
I can get you bread.
No, we're gonna, we still have more meeting to do here, so I think it's important that you need an answer from us very soon.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's going to be a huge lift between now and May 7th.
Yes. One thing I would like to note, the village, okay, we don't need the sign gesture. That's fine. Thank you. It's really good. I'm happy for you. The Village of Cold Spring did unanimously approve their portion of the Article 78 last night to combine with the Town of Philipstown. I appreciate the support of the village board. So I would like to entertain a motion this evening to authorize the town attorney to file the process of filing an Article 78 in reference to the finding statements for the Fjord Trail. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Councilman Roush.
Aye.
Councilman Flaherty.
Aye.
I vote aye. Councilwoman Farrell.
I vote no. I think there might be unintended consequences, and I don't want to sue New York State.
Okay. Councilman
I vote
Prentice.
aye.
Aye. Thank you. So it's supported 4-1. Thank you. Moving on. Now I need an agenda. What's next?
You lost your agenda. Next on the agenda is a resolution authorizing the town clerk to put the South Mountain Pass East Mountain Road South Drainage Project out for bid. And Ron did send me the final bid docs, but not until this afternoon, and they're hundreds of pages, so if you want to see them,
No,
you're getting a
that's
digital
fine.
copy. Yeah.
So can I get a motion authorizing the advertisement for the South Mountain Pass, where is it?
East Mountain.
South Mountain Pass, East Mountain Road Draining Project out for bid. We're still waiting on the paving bid. The paving proposal.
Yes.
Yes. Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I vote aye.
Next is a resolution accepting the retirement of Annette Flaherty as court clerk effective May 29th, 2026, and authorizing the town clerk to advertise for the position.
I regretfully will read this, but dear Supervisor Van Tassel, please accept this letter as my formal resignation from my position as the court clerk for the town of Philipstown. My last day in office will be May 8th with the retirement date of May 29th. It has been a pleasure to work with the town justices and the court clerk, Nancy Yaremko, for the past 2 years. I am grateful for all the support I've received during my time here. Please let me know how I can help during this transition to make it as smooth as possible. So we will advertise. I did speak with them today. Nancy is willing to stay on just to keep the court afloat, which is not an easy task. So if you know anybody that's looking for a career, have them trained to be a court clerk, because it is truly a specialized job, and it's not easy to find people. So we will advertise. Annette has agreed to do whatever is needed to keep the court functioning, which we certainly will. So could I get a motion accepting Annette's resignation and also letting the clerk advertise for a new court clerk. Second.
Second.
All in favor? And I vote aye. Right, poor Bob. There goes your peace and quiet at home.
Next on the agenda is to schedule any workshops or meetings. Our monthly meeting is scheduled for May 7th. Available workshop dates in April, obviously the 8th already passed, are the 15th and the 29th.
Do we have anything that we need to have a workshop? Yes, sir.
I'd like to request a workshop to discuss the process of going for a community preservation
Okay.
fund.
And what date would you like?
Either any date that's available.
You've got the 15th or the 29th.
Can we do the 29th? I would prefer later in the month.
Okay.
Perfect.
Yep.
That's a Wednesday, right?
Yep.
Yes.
I'm not available the last week of April.
Okay, so then we're gonna go with the 15th, I guess. Do we need, would Mary Kate, we probably don't.
Say the
you know.
town
We-
attorney doesn't typically
I
attend.
don't know if we need it for that.
You have work to
Yeah,
do
she
anyway.
has a meeting.
Okay, so we'll stick with the 29th.
Next is the Code Enforcement Monthly Report. This is for March. Total fees collected, $93,555.69. There were 38 total permits issued, 2 new 1 or 2 family dwellings, 3 additions, alterations, or repairs to residential buildings, 33 all other permits, 14 certificates of occupancy, 1 stop work order issued, 2 operating permits issued, 3 inspections of public assembly, and 1 inspection of commercial occupancies.
My thanks to Greg Warner and team next door. Anything else from the board?
Yeah, I got a couple.
No, thank you. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I have a couple things. I met with Roy and Lucy Etter. They approached us a couple months ago regarding the memorial garden they'd like to have. I brought them up to Glassberry Court, and we came up to an area which they think would be sufficient and like with that. So it's on the, I guess consider the west side in the corner. Anyways, they did send us some plans, so I don't know if we need to get the building inspector involved or anything like that, or
There
but
would probably be a permit required.
Yeah,
I think
so-
we should check with the property owner's agreement with.
with Glassberry,
too.
okay. So who?
Just to make sure we have.
Who would have to do the?
Sue will have
Sue's,
the
okay,
information. Yep.
okay, so I met with them, as I said, this is a memorial for suicide victims, so.
It's a very simple, small
Yeah,
memorial.
very small,
There's nothing,
nothing major
there's no
about it.
lights, oh, no.
No, nothing. Also, I had a tour of the Shakespeare, new, facility up there. It's very impressive, gotta say. It's like, you get on top of that hill, it's some view that you could see. So I was there the other day, thanks to, Ian Murdoch. He gave me the tour. So just so everyone knows, Community Day for that is set for May 17th, 1 to 4. I think there's gonna be, some groups are gonna be invites, but I don't know the whole thing yet, but I know, I did see the webpage, from 1 to 4, they're gonna have some type of activities, tours and so forth like that. I also met with a flagpole company the other day. Our flagpole out here has been around probably 70, 80 years, and we always seem to have problems with the pulley, so we're looking to get a new flagpole, we're just getting some prices and so forth like that. So that's the only thing that I have added to. One other thing, the solar at the highway, the garage is just about there. 1 or more, 2 little things, we should have it on within a hopefully 2-week period.
Thank you, Bob. Judy?
Thank
Yep.
you. I just wanted to add that the Code Enforcement Officer, Greg Warner, gave comments on the draft for the short-term rental regulations that we're drafting. So I
so
think I forwarded them to you, but we can discuss them
Yeah,
later date.
okay, yeah.
Do we have we'll have a final
We'll have a
for,
final.
for May?
I think we'll have it in time for May.
Okay,
Or if June is better, because I know your schedule is pretty
yeah.
full this month. So,
Thank you. Yeah, I don't recall receiving them, but if you have them handy and can forward them to
Sure.
me again,
Okay.
I'd be happy to see them.
okay, great. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Nat, anything?
No.
Ned? Nope. Audience? Yes?
My name is Vanessa. I'm a resident of Garrison. This is a public safety issue, so I know it's late. I just hope that everybody could just bear with me. Here, I'm going to read it so we stay on task. Okay, I'm here because the town took over a prosecution of a dangerous dog case that involved my family, and I still don't have a full understanding of how the case was ultimately resolved or who made that decision. This began after multiple attacks by a pit bull on my dog on my own property, both of which my young child witnessed. In the first attack, my dog got 8 staples in her neck, and I was injured intervening. In the second, the dog came onto my property, and I was knocked over while trying to protect my dog, also sustaining injuries, and I called the sheriff after that incident. In both cases, the pit bull escaped directly under the owner's supervision, my neighbor, once from a car window while he was in the driver's seat, and the other out his front door when he was answering a delivery. These were not isolated incidents. I first went to the town's animal control officer for help and guidance. From there, I pushed to get a complaint formally filed and move the case forward. I spent significant amount of time compiling evidence, writing to the court, researching, and trying to navigate the process because this was and remains a serious safety issue for my family. When I appeared in court, I was up against an attorney representing the defendant who urged the court to hold me to the same standard as counsel, which made it clear I could not effectively proceed on my own. I then contacted multiple attorneys to represent me, all of whom advised me that this was the town's responsibility to prosecute. I requested that the town take over, and the town agreed and retained counsel. I was in communication with the attorney and made it very clear I would not agree to any settlement that did not provide real protection, that a fence or training alone would not be sufficient, given the history of the dog escaping under the owner's direct supervision. I was informed that the case would likely proceed to trial, and I was prepared for that. Time passed with no updates, and I later learned, completely without my knowledge or involvement, that the case had been settled. I was told the file had been handed off internally and that a settlement had been reached. Before that settlement was solidified, I reached out to the town supervisor seeking answers. Ultimately, he notified me that he was unable to communicate about it. I then asked who could communicate about it, and I didn't receive a response. Since then, I have repeatedly asked who authorized the settlement on behalf of the town, and I've not been given an answer. As a parent, the impact of this has been significant. My child no longer feels safe outside in her own yard and suffered some real trauma. And that's why I worked so hard from the very beginning, which was like over a year's time, to have this case properly heard. This is a public safety issue, and the outcome directly affects my family, yet I was excluded from the process, and I still can't get the basic information about how that decision was made. So my questions are simple. Who authorized the settlement on behalf of the town? What's the town's process for approving a resolution like this? And why was I, as the complainant and the primary witness, and the person who pushed this forward and more for months and months, not included or even informed before any decision was made?
So we've been in contact numerous times, and I truly sympathize with your situation, and I think you're well aware of that. But we, the town, have done everything in our power to do what you want us to do. We are not in a position to respond for the court or for the proceeding. I would suggest that you have your attorney speak with the town attorney. We are not in a position to be able to discuss this publicly.
I asked the town attorney repeatedly to just let me know, A, the terms of any settlements, and B, like, how did this occur? Like, he said the town has to signed off on it. I mean, I know on their part, he handed the file off because he went on paternity leave, and apparently the next person in that office said, okay, we'll settle this. But I don't know why, because I was so involved, I was the one pushing it forward all along for months and months and months. And it's a serious issue. This dog should have killed my dog, and like 2 people couldn't get the dog off. And why this all came to be without any kind of...
Again, I truly sympathize with your situation. but it's a legal matter with the town court. It's not the town board. We
But
have
the
done.
town signed off on it. Who
We,
signed off?
we have not signed off on anything. It is a court proceeding that not involving the town board, so.
I guess the question fundamentally is, we don't want to necessarily argue
I'm
that.
sorry, I can't-
We don't want to necessarily argue the substantive merits of the case because it's inappropriate. We just wanted to give some context. But, I mean, one of two possibilities here can apply. One is that the board or the town supervisor was aware of the situation and the recommended settlement and signed off on it. Or
We did nothing of the sort.
or there's a framework within which settlement authority is delegated to the attorney. And
Or the court.
Pardon
The
me?
court and the judge.
No. But you know, the first step always has to be that the two parties have to agree to the settlement. All the court does is approve the final terms. But in terms of signing off on the settlement terms themselves, involving a dispute with the town, then either that has to come via the board or the supervisor, or is delegated.
I'm not an attorney, and I'm not the judge, but the town, it's not the town's dog. It's a case between you and the dog owner, is my understanding. And it's not, we have not signed off on anything. We've done everything in our
Okay.
anything that we could do, we have done,
So-
because I truly sympathize with your
I
situation.
understand your supervisor. So what, by implication, that would mean that the town attorney has authority to sign off on the settlement.
The court has handled it, and that's all I'm going to say. I can't go
But
any
there's a
further.
missing step there, though, right?
What's that?
There's a missing step there, because the settlement terms, first of all, have to be agreed by the parties to the dispute, right? The court sits there as an independent arbiter. Someone must have signed off on the settlement terms on behalf of the town.
My point is, it was not this town board or the supervisors.
Or the animal control officer, because
So,
she didn't.
again, this is not a public discussion. This should be between you and the court and not the town board.
I mean, it's so difficult to get any answers. There's nobody there I can reach out to. You don't have any letters I've written to the court? This is the only, recourse I feel like I have.
Which, it's really not a good one, because our powers are limited here. We've done everything we could on your behalf.
John, my final question would be, is what authority does the town attorney have to sign off on a settlement involving the town?
I'm not going to say it's the town attorney. It's the court that has made this decision.
It can't be the court. They're not-
Again, I'm not,
That's just a flawed argument, because it can't be the case.
it's not here in this place. So, thank you. I appreciate it. It's not our issue to solve. So.
Well, okay, that's fine. I'll just conclude by saying, just really quite affirmatively, that everyone in this room, including this town board, is on notice, is on actual notice. If that dog escapes and causes damage or irreparable harm or any type of injury to person or my companion animal, I will have this municipality in my crosshairs.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you. Anything else from the audience? Okay. Vacancies. Yep, one on the
We have
ZBA.
the ZBA and the Conservation
on the
Board. We got
Conservation
the
Board?
one application that I had forwarded you guys.
We do?
Yeah, I forwarded it to you. It was probably before I was out. I'll have to go back in and
Yeah,
look.
no,
It was-
if you forward
And
it,
it was
but-
for, I believe, the Conservation Board.
Okay.
But I'll re-forward it.
Okay.
So we'll re-advertise as well?
Yep.
Thank you. We need a new paper.
With a new paper and an added open position in the court.
Approval of vouchers, general.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor? And I vote aye. Highway.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor? And I vote aye. Continental Village Park District.
So moved.
Second.
Aye.
All in favor? And I vote aye. Continental Village Water.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor? And I vote aye. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Whew.